Edgar Cayce's thousands of documented readings revealed a shocking truth that challenges everything modern science believes about death. We are constantly surrounded by conscious spiritual beings who are actively trying to communicate with us. The Sleeping Prophet's 43 years of trance readings documented case after case of ordinary people developing the ability to sense, communicate with, and receive guidance from spirits of departed loved ones, advanced spiritual teachers, and protective guides assigned to help us navigate earthly existence. But here's what made Cayce's revelations revolutionary. He didn't just claim that spirits exist around us. He provided precise, scientific explanations for how spiritual communication works, why some people naturally sense spirits while others remain oblivious, and most importantly, how anyone can safely develop this natural human ability without fear of attracting harmful entities. Through his extensive readings given in Virginia Beach, Hopkinsville, and across America during the early to mid-20th century, Cayce mapped the invisible mechanics of spiritual presence with the precision of a master engineer. What he discovered challenges every assumption we have about the boundaries between life and death, consciousness and matter, the seen and the unseen. According to Cayce's documented teachings, every human being possesses what he termed spiritual discernment, an innate ability to perceive beyond the physical realm. This isn't a rare psychic gift reserved for the specially chosen. It's as natural to human consciousness as sight is to our physical eyes. The reason most people don't experience regular spiritual contact isn't because they lack the ability. It's because modern life has caused us to unconsciously shut down our spiritual sensitivity through doubt, fear, materialistic thinking, and simple neglect of our soul's development. Cayce's readings revealed that our consciousness operates simultaneously on multiple dimensional levels. Our physical awareness represents only the surface layer of a vast ocean of spiritual sensitivity that extends far beyond what we normally consider possible. Every person carries within their energy field what Cayce described as an auric antenna, an electromagnetic spiritual receiver that naturally detects the presence and communications of spiritual beings. But this spiritual antenna doesn't operate randomly. Cayce's readings documented a precise spiritual law governing all contact between dimensions. We attract spiritual presences whose vibrational level matches our own mental, emotional, and spiritual development. This means that a person filled with fear, anger, resentment, or negative emotions will naturally draw the attention of lower vibrational entities, spirits who remain trapped in similar emotional states and are attracted to the familiar energy patterns. Conversely, individuals who cultivate love, compassion, forgiveness, and genuine desire for spiritual growth create an energetic signature that attracts highly evolved spiritual teachers, departed loved ones operating from states of peace, and what Cayce called guides of light, advanced souls dedicated to assisting human spiritual development. This principle of spiritual attraction operates with mathematical precision across all dimensions of existence. It's not a matter of luck or random spiritual encounters. It's an immutable law that puts us in complete control of the quality and nature of our spiritual contacts through our choices in thought, emotion, and behavior. Cayce identified 3 specific methods through which spirits make their presence known to human consciousness. The first method operates through what his readings termed sympathetic resonance. When our emotional or mental state aligns with a spirit's energy signature, we suddenly become aware of their presence through distinct atmospheric changes, sudden temperature shifts, the unmistakable feeling of being observed, electrical sensations in the air, or that profound sense that someone has just entered our space even when no physical person is present. This sympathetic resonance works through vibrational matching between consciousness operating on different dimensional levels. Just as radio waves of similar frequencies can sync together, human consciousness naturally attunes to spiritual presences operating on compatible vibrational levels. The key insight from Cayce's readings is that we have complete control over which frequencies we broadcast through our mental and emotional choices. The second method involves direct energetic contact between spiritual entities and our nervous system. Cayce's readings documented how spirits can create specific physical sensations, tingling along the spine, goosebumps appearing without physical cause, the familiar feeling of hair rising on the back of the neck, or sudden waves of warmth or coolness moving through the body. These aren't random physical phenomena, they're deliberate communications from spiritual beings who understand how to interface with human bioelectrical systems. But the most profound form of direct contact occurs when spirits impress thoughts, images, or information directly into human consciousness. Cayce's readings revealed that what we often dismiss as imagination, daydreams, or random thoughts may actually be communications from spiritual guides who lack the ability to manifest physically, but can still influence our mental processes. The distinguishing characteristic of genuine spiritual communication is its quality. Guidance from evolved spiritual sources typically carries a sense of peace, wisdom, unconditional love, or profound knowing that our own worried, fearful thoughts rarely possess. The third and most remarkable method operates through what Cayce called soul recognition, the deep, unmistakable knowing that occurs when we encounter a spiritual presence with whom we share significant history across multiple lifetimes. This recognition bypasses the conscious mind entirely, creating an immediate soul-level awareness that someone deeply familiar is present, even when our personality consciousness has no memory of the connection. Soul recognition functions through what Cayce's readings described as the eternal memory of the soul, an imperishable record of every relationship, connection, and bond we've formed across all our lifetimes of existence. When a soul with whom we've shared profound experiences in previous incarnations attempts to make contact, our deeper consciousness immediately recognizes them through this eternal memory system, creating that unmistakable feeling of profound familiarity with a presence we cannot physically identify. Cayce's teachings revealed that our ability to sense spiritual presences serves a crucial educational purpose in our spiritual development. These contacts aren't random supernatural experiences or meaningless encounters with the dead. They're part of a vast, organized system of spiritual education designed to help us understand our true nature as eternal souls temporarily inhabiting physical bodies for the purpose of conscious evolution. Through his readings, Cayce documented how spiritual contact increases during specific time periods when the barriers between dimensions naturally thin. The hours between 3 and 4 a.m. represent what he called the hour of spiritual activity, a time when our conscious mind reaches its quietest state, while spiritual entities find it easiest to bridge the gap between dimensions. Many of Cayce's most profound spiritual communications occurred during these early morning hours when normal consciousness barriers become permeable. But this temporal gateway operates bidirectionally. While beneficial spirits find easier access during these vulnerable hours, so do confused earthbound entities and lower vibrational presences. Cayce's readings repeatedly emphasize the critical importance of spiritual preparation and protection before attempting any form of conscious communication during these spiritually active periods. Beyond the 3 to 4 a.m. window, Cayce identified several other naturally occurring spiritual high tide periods, the drowsy moments just before sleep when conscious resistance diminishes, the first few minutes after waking when consciousness remains expanded, times of deep emotional intensity when our normal mental barriers dissolve, and periods of intense prayer, meditation, or creative inspiration when consciousness naturally expands beyond ordinary limitations. For individuals seeking to develop their spiritual sensitivity safely and beneficially, Cayce provided specific guidance that remains as relevant today as when first given during the early 20th century. The foundation of safe spiritual development begins with establishing what he called a spiritual ideal, a clear, conscious commitment to seeking spiritual contact only for the highest purposes of growth, service, and alignment with divine will. Regular meditation practice forms the cornerstone of spiritual development, but Cayce specified that effective meditation involves more than simply quieting the mind. His readings recommended what he termed entering the silence through spiritual focus, using meditation time to attune consciousness specifically to divine love, wisdom, and guidance, rather than attempting to empty the mind or invite random spiritual contact. Study of uplifting spiritual literature serves a dual purpose in spiritual development. First, Exposure to elevated spiritual concepts and principles literally raises our mental vibration, making us more attractive to highly evolved spiritual teachers while becoming less appealing to confused or negative entities. Second, spiritual study provides the conceptual framework necessary to understand and properly interpret the guidance we receive through spiritual contact. Prayer, according to Cayce's readings, should be approached not as supplication or begging, but as conscious two-way communication with the divine forces that constantly surround us. Effective prayer creates a protective spiritual barrier around us, while simultaneously opening channels for beneficial spiritual guidance to flow freely. The key principle is approaching prayer from gratitude and desire to serve, rather than fear, selfishness, or mere curiosity about spiritual phenomena. Cayce's readings repeatedly warned against approaching spiritual contact from curiosity alone or with selfish motivations. The intention behind our desire for spiritual communication determines absolutely which types of entities we attract. Those seeking contact for personal gain, to impress others, or merely for entertainment, consistently find themselves dealing with confused earthbound spirits or mischievous entities who share similar self-serving motivations. However, individuals approaching the spirit world with genuine desire for spiritual growth, healing, and service to others create what Cayce called a barrier of light that automatically repels harmful influences while attracting only beneficial spiritual contact. This protection operates through spiritual law rather than human effort. When our motivations align with divine purpose, the universe automatically provides the spiritual support and protection necessary for safe development. One of Cayce's most profound teachings concerned the continuous presence of our departed loved ones. His readings revealed that souls who transition from physical existence don't actually leave us. They simply begin operating from a different dimensional level, while maintaining the love connections that bound them to us during physical life. These love bonds create what Cayce termed spiritual corridors, energetic pathways that enable ongoing communication between souls, regardless of which dimensional plane they currently inhabit. But grief, while natural and necessary, can create vibrational barriers that interfere with our ability to sense our departed loved ones. The heavy emotional frequency of prolonged sorrow makes spiritual contact more difficult by creating energetic static that obscures the subtle communications our loved ones are constantly attempting to send. However, when grief transforms into gratitude for shared experiences and love that transcends physical death, optimal conditions develop for ongoing spiritual communion. This transformation process extends far beyond emotional healing. It represents a fundamental shift in consciousness that often awakens previously dormant spiritual abilities. Individuals who successfully navigate grief frequently develop heightened intuition, increased compassion, and expanded awareness of the spiritual dimensions underlying all physical existence. Cayce's readings documented the organized structure of spiritual guidance surrounding every human being. Each person, according to his teachings, is assigned a guardian spirit, typically a highly evolved soul with whom we've shared many lifetimes, who serves as our primary spiritual protector and advisor throughout our earthly journey. This guardian works closely with a team of specialized spiritual guides who assist with different aspects of our development. Healing guides work specifically with physical, emotional, and mental wellness, often impressing knowledge about natural remedies, lifestyle changes, or healing practices. Teaching guides specialize in intellectual and spiritual growth, providing inspiration, creative ideas, and expanded understanding. Protective guides focus on shielding us from harmful influences, warning us about dangerous situations, and ensuring we remain aligned with our soul's chosen purpose for this lifetime. But these spiritual guides operate under strict universal laws that protect human free will. They cannot interfere with our choices or force us to accept their guidance. They can only offer assistance when we genuinely seek help and remain open to receiving it. This explains why spiritual guidance often appears subtle or ambiguous. It's designed to support our growth without overriding our fundamental need to make our own decisions and learn through direct experience. The presence of protective spiritual forces intensifies dramatically when we engage in genuine service to others or pursue our soul's authentic purpose for this lifetime. Cayce's readings described how individuals dedicated to helping humanity become surrounded by what he called legions of light, advanced spiritual beings who ensure that nothing can interfere with their sacred work. This spiritual protection isn't automatically granted. It must be earned through consistent demonstration of our commitment to spiritual principles and service to the greater good of all life. The more completely we align our will with divine will, the more spiritual support becomes available to assist our efforts. Perhaps Cayce's most revolutionary teaching about spiritual presence was his revelation that we ourselves are spiritual beings who will eventually serve as guides for others, still learning in physical form. The spirits we sense around us now were once physical beings facing the same challenges we currently face, and someday we'll be the loving spiritual presences surrounding and guiding souls still developing through earthly experience. This creates what Cayce called the eternal cycle of spiritual service, an ongoing system of mutual assistance that connects all souls across time and dimensions. Every act of kindness, every moment of genuine spiritual growth, every choice made from love rather than fear contributes to this vast network of spiritual support that spans all levels of existence. Understanding this principle completely transforms our relationship with spiritual presence. We're not passive recipients of help from some external supernatural source. We're active participants in an eternal conversation between different levels of consciousness, all working together to support the spiritual evolution of every soul throughout creation. Every time we sense a spiritual presence, we're being invited into deeper communion with what Cayce called the Akashic records, the living memory system that connects every soul to the accumulated wisdom and experience of all existence. These records aren't simply a cosmic library of past events. They represent a dynamic, interactive network of consciousness that makes the wisdom of ages accessible to anyone who develops sufficient spiritual sensitivity to access them. This connection explains many phenomena that conventional psychology struggles to understand. Sudden knowledge that seems to come from nowhere, the ability to sense others' emotions or thoughts, dreams that provide solutions to waking problems, creative inspiration that surpasses our normal abilities. All of these represent our consciousness accessing information from the Akashic records through our network of spiritual connections. The key to safe, beneficial spiritual contact lies in maintaining what Cayce called the Christ consciousness, a state of unconditional love and selfless service that automatically aligns us with the highest spiritual forces available. When we embody this consciousness, we naturally attract spiritual guides and teachers operating from the same divine love while remaining automatically protected from lower vibrational influences. Christ consciousness, in Cayce's teachings, transcends any particular religious tradition. It represents the highest possible expression of human spiritual development, the state of awareness that recognizes divinity within all beings and seeks to serve the highest good in every situation. When we consistently operate from this level of consciousness, we become magnets for the most evolved spiritual guidance while naturally repelling any harmful influences. As we develop genuine spiritual sensitivity, the artificial boundary between physical and spiritual worlds begins dissolving. We recognize that we're not isolated beings struggling alone in a purely material universe. We're integral parts of an infinite family of souls, constantly connected through love, continuously supporting each other's growth, perpetually available to assist anyone who develops the sensitivity to recognize our presence and guidance. This recognition brings both profound comfort and significant responsibility. If we're truly connected to all life through spiritual channels, then our thoughts, emotions, and actions affect not only ourselves, but the entire network of consciousness. Every choice we make creates ripples throughout the spiritual dimensions, either adding to the sum total of love and wisdom available to all souls, or contributing to the confusion and discord that hinders spiritual progress. The development of spiritual sensitivity reveals the true purpose behind physical existence. We're not here by accident, cosmic punishment, or random chance. We're here as conscious participants in a vast educational system designed to help souls evolve toward perfect expression of divine love. Our ability to sense spiritual presences represents one tool in this educational process, a means of maintaining connection with our spiritual teachers and guides while navigating the specific challenges we chose to face during this particular lifetime. The spirits around us aren't trying to frighten, amaze, or manipulate us. They're working constantly to remind us of our true spiritual nature and help us remember the divine purpose behind our earthly journey. Every genuine contact with the spirit world represents an invitation to expand our consciousness and step more fully into our destiny as beings capable of expressing both human and divine qualities simultaneously. This understanding transforms every aspect of earthly existence. Work becomes conscious service, relationships become opportunities for mutual spiritual growth, and challenges become precisely designed lessons meant to strengthen our spiritual character and expand our capacity for love. When we truly comprehend that we're surrounded by loving spiritual presences dedicated to our highest good, fear loses its power over us, and life becomes an adventure in consciousness expansion. Today, as increasing numbers of people report spiritual encounters, near-death experiences, and psychic phenomena, Cayce's teachings provide a reliable roadmap for understanding these experiences. We're not witnessing the dawn of a new age of spiritual awakening. We're simply remembering natural abilities that human consciousness always possessed, but temporarily forgot how to access and use safely. According to Cayce's prophetic readings, humanity is approaching a period of accelerated spiritual development when the barriers between dimensions will become increasingly permeable. More people will naturally develop psychic abilities, not because they're specially gifted, but because planetary consciousness itself is shifting toward frequencies that make spiritual contact easier and more natural for everyone. But this increase in spiritual activity brings both unprecedented opportunities and significant dangers. Those who approach the spirit world with wisdom, proper preparation, and pure motivation will discover themselves supported by incredible spiritual resources. However, those who approach carelessly, from curiosity alone, or with selfish intentions, may find themselves dealing with spiritual influences they're completely unprepared to handle safely. The key to successfully navigating this transition lies in faithfully following the principles Cayce established decades ago. Maintain high spiritual ideals, practice regular meditation and prayer, study uplifting spiritual literature, always approach spiritual contact with the intention to serve rather than be served, and never attempt spiritual communication without proper preparation and protection. The spirits around us are waiting with infinite patience for us to develop sufficient spiritual sensitivity to recognize their presence and wisdom to benefit from their guidance. They're not strangers from some distant supernatural realm. They're the extended family of our soul, the graduates of physical existence who now serve as teachers, protectors, and guides for those of us still learning through earthly experience. Understanding the true nature of spiritual presence also helps us prepare consciously for our own inevitable transition from physical to spiritual existence. Death, according to Cayce's extensive teachings, is not an ending, but a graduation, a movement from one classroom in the vast university of consciousness to another level of learning and service. The spirits we sense around us are showing us that consciousness continues beyond physical death, and that love truly represents the only force in the universe stronger than death itself. The question isn't whether spirits surround us. Edgar Cayce's thousands of documented readings prove conclusively that they do. The real questions are, have we developed sufficient spiritual maturity to sense their presence, and do we possess enough wisdom to benefit from their guidance? Cayce's teachings demonstrate that with proper preparation, protection, and pure motivation, every human being can develop this most natural of abilities, the capacity to communicate consciously with the vast community of souls that surrounds us constantly, offering love, wisdom, and living proof that death is simply a doorway to expanded existence. As we awaken to this reality, we discover that sensing spiritual presences isn't merely a psychic phenomenon. It's a return to our natural state as multidimensional beings capable of conscious interaction across all levels of existence. We're reclaiming our birthright as citizens of both physical and spiritual worlds, able to draw upon the accumulated wisdom and love of countless souls who've walked this path before us and now serve as our guides toward the same spiritual mastery they achieved. Ready to begin developing your own spiritual sensitivity? Start with Edgar Cayce's foundational teaching. Begin each day with meditation and prayer, consciously setting your intention to serve the highest good of all life. As your consciousness expands through consistent spiritual practice, you'll naturally begin sensing the loving spiritual presences that have surrounded you throughout your entire life, waiting patiently for you to recognize their gifts and accept their guidance toward your own spiritual awakening and mastery. Throughout history, one question has haunted humanity. When we die, do our physical sufferings follow us into whatever comes next? For most of us, this question remains purely philosophical. But Edgar Cayce, the most documented psychic in American history, claimed to have the answer, and it's more complex than anyone imagined. Between 1901 and 1944, from his modest home in Virginia Beach, Virginia, Edgar Cayce gave over 14,000 documented psychic readings that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of life, death, and everything in between. Among the most profound were his insights about the relationship between physical illness and the soul's journey after death. What he revealed challenges everything we think we know about healing, consciousness, and eternal life. According to Cayce's documented teachings, physical illnesses themselves don't follow us after death because they're tied to the physical body, which returns to dust. But something far more significant does carry forward: the mental and spiritual patterns that created those illnesses in the first place. This discovery revolutionized how we understand the true nature of healing. But before we dive deeper into this revelation, we need to understand who Edgar Cayce really was and why his teachings continue to influence millions of people worldwide. Born in rural Kentucky in 1877, Cayce discovered his unusual abilities as a young man when he entered a trance-like state to cure his own chronic laryngitis. What started as personal healing soon became a lifetime of service to others, seeking answers to life's most pressing questions. What made Cayce unique wasn't just his psychic abilities, but the meticulous documentation of every reading he gave. Stenographers recorded his exact words, and these transcripts were carefully preserved and are housed today at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach. This means we have an unprecedented record of spiritual teachings that can be studied, analyzed, and verified. When it came to questions about illness and the afterlife, Cayce's readings were remarkably consistent across decades. He consistently taught that most physical ailments originate from what he called spiritual imbalances, patterns of thought, emotion, and spiritual development that manifest as physical symptoms. In his worldview, the body serves as a learning laboratory for the soul, and illnesses are often the soul's way of drawing attention to lessons that need to be learned. According to Cayce's philosophy, every soul comes into each incarnation with specific purposes and lessons to learn. These purposes often involve overcoming particular weaknesses or developing certain spiritual qualities. Physical illness, rather than being random misfortune, serves as one of the primary vehicles through which these lessons are learned. For example, Cayce's readings consistently indicated that conditions affecting the heart often relate to lessons about love, either learning to love more freely, to receive love more openly, or to heal from the wounds of love withheld or betrayed. Digestive disorders frequently connected to difficulty digesting or accepting life's experiences, often rooted in worry, fear, or resentment. Joint and bone problems often reflected inflexibility in thinking or inability to adapt to life's changing circumstances. But here's where it gets fascinating. Cayce explained that when we truly heal these deeper patterns, not just treat symptoms, but address the spiritual root causes, we heal at the level of our eternal being. This means the healing transcends physical death and becomes part of our soul's permanent growth. What happened in his readings that proved this theory would astound even the most skeptical minds. Throughout thousands of documented sessions, Cayce repeatedly described how souls carry forward their learned wisdom and spiritual development from lifetime to lifetime. He taught that what he sometimes called the Akashic records, the soul's complete record of all experiences and growth, contain not just our experiences, but our spiritual development, including any deep healing we've accomplished. According to Cayce's teachings, when a soul masters a particular lesson through dealing with physical illness, that mastery becomes permanent. If someone develops genuine patience through dealing with chronic pain, learns authentic compassion through caring for others, or discovers true inner strength through overcoming physical limitations, these spiritual qualities become permanently integrated into their soul essence. The physical illness served its purpose and is no longer needed in future incarnations. This concept revolutionizes our entire understanding of suffering and healing. Rather than viewing illness as punishment or random misfortune, Cayce's readings present it as purposeful spiritual curriculum designed by the soul itself for its own advancement. However, Cayce also warned about what happens when we ignore the spiritual lessons our illnesses offer. If we focus solely on suppressing symptoms without addressing the underlying spiritual growth opportunities, those unlearned lessons remain in the soul's pattern. They may not manifest as the same physical illness in a future lifetime, but the spiritual imbalance will seek expression through whatever means serve the soul's continued learning. The unresolved pattern might appear as different physical conditions, challenging relationships, or difficult life circumstances, all designed to present the same spiritual lesson in a new form. This is why Cayce always emphasized holistic healing, addressing body, mind, and spirit together. His readings consistently showed that true healing requires understanding the spiritual purpose behind our physical challenges. He would often recommend not just physical remedies like dietary changes, exercises, or treatments, but also specific mental attitudes to cultivate, emotional healing work to undertake, and spiritual practices to develop. The beauty of Cayce's approach was its integration of practical and metaphysical wisdom. He never suggested that people should ignore medical treatment in favor of spiritual approaches alone. Instead, he advocated for what we might now call integrative healing, working with qualified physicians while simultaneously addressing the mental and spiritual aspects of any condition. In Cayce's documented teachings about reincarnation, he explained that souls choose their circumstances, including health challenges, before each incarnation. These choices are always made in service of spiritual growth and what he called karmic balancing, the soul's opportunity to heal, learn, and evolve beyond past limitations. This doesn't mean that souls deliberately choose suffering for its own sake. Rather, they choose experiences that will provide the maximum opportunity for spiritual advancement. A soul that has struggled with anger in past lifetimes might choose circumstances that will help it develop patience and forgiveness. A soul that has been selfish might choose experiences that cultivate compassion and service to others. The implications of this understanding are profound. It suggests that every health challenge we face is actually an invitation from our higher self to grow spiritually. Rather than being victims of random illness, we're active participants in our soul's evolution. The physical symptoms, while real and requiring proper treatment, are ultimately temporary teachers, pointing toward eternal spiritual development. This perspective can transform how we relate to illness and suffering. Instead of asking, "Why me?" we might begin to ask, "What is this experience teaching me?" Or, "How can I grow through this challenge?" This shift in perspective often becomes the first step toward genuine healing at all levels. Cayce's readings also revealed that healing at the soul level benefits not just the individual, but contributes to collective human evolution. When we transform our deepest patterns of fear, anger, or separation into love, forgiveness, and unity, we're healing something that extends beyond our personal experience. We become part of what he called the healing force that elevates all of consciousness. One of Cayce's most revolutionary concepts was that consciousness itself is the bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. He taught that our state of consciousness, our thoughts, emotions, and spiritual awareness directly influences our physical health. By elevating our consciousness through spiritual practice, meditation, prayer, and service to others, we can literally transform the patterns that might otherwise carry forward after death. This understanding places tremendous power in our hands. we're not helpless victims of inherited conditions or karmic debt. Instead, we're empowered spiritual beings with the ability to consciously participate in our own healing and evolution. Every moment of choosing love over fear, forgiveness over resentment, or service over selfishness becomes an act of spiritual transformation. But Cayce emphasized something crucial that many people miss in their enthusiasm for spiritual healing. Spiritual healing doesn't mean we should ignore medical treatment or assume all illness serves a spiritual purpose. He consistently recommended working with qualified physicians, following proper medical protocols, and taking practical steps to support physical healing while simultaneously addressing the mental and spiritual aspects of any condition. Cayce's approach was remarkably balanced and practical, even while dealing with the most profound metaphysical concepts. He understood that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, which means we need to honor both aspects of our nature. Neglecting the physical while focusing only on the spiritual can be just as limiting as treating only symptoms while ignoring deeper causes. According to his documented teachings, the soul's journey between lifetimes involves what he described as a review and integration process. During this period, which varies in duration based on the soul's development and the intensity of the most recent incarnation, souls process and integrate all the experiences and lessons from their earthly life. This review process is not judgmental in the way many religious traditions suggest. Instead, it's a time of understanding, integration, and planning. Souls review their experiences with complete understanding of the spiritual purposes behind even the most challenging events. The pain and limitation of illness are seen in their proper context, as temporary experiences that serve the soul's eternal growth. During this between-life period, souls also plan their next incarnation if they choose to return to Earth. This planning involves selecting the circumstances, relationships, and yes, even the physical challenges that will best serve their continued evolution. The key insight from Cayce's readings is that nothing is chosen randomly or as punishment. Every aspect of a soul's incarnation is carefully selected to provide maximum opportunity for spiritual advancement. Cayce's vision of the afterlife suggests that souls continue to evolve and learn, but from a state of greater understanding and freedom from physical constraints. The pain and limitation of illness serve their purpose in the physical realm, but have no place in the soul's continued existence beyond death. Instead, the wisdom gained through those experiences becomes part of the soul's eternal treasure. This understanding offers profound comfort to anyone facing serious illness or caring for loved ones with chronic conditions. It suggests that while the physical journey may be challenging, every moment of growth, every act of love, every instance of forgiveness or courage becomes part of our eternal spiritual heritage. But perhaps most importantly, Cayce's teachings emphasize that we don't have to wait until after death to experience this spiritual liberation. As we learn the lessons our challenges are teaching us, as we heal the deeper patterns behind our physical symptoms, we begin to experience greater freedom and joy, even while still in physical form. In his later readings, particularly during the 1940s as World War II raged around the world, Cayce increasingly emphasized that humanity was entering a new phase of spiritual evolution. He suggested that souls incarnating during this period often come with the specific mission of transforming old karmic patterns both individually and collectively. According to these teachings, many of the health challenges we face today represent opportunities to heal not just personal karma, but ancestral and collective patterns that have affected humanity for generations. When we heal with this broader perspective in mind, our individual transformation contributes to the healing of our families, communities, and even the world. This expanded understanding of healing adds profound meaning to every health challenge we face. We're not just healing for ourselves, but for all those who came before us and all who will come after. Our courage in facing illness, our dedication to learning its lessons, and our commitment to healing at the deepest levels becomes a gift to all of consciousness. Cayce also taught about what he called soul groups, collections of souls who incarnate together lifetime after lifetime, playing different roles to help each other learn and grow. Often, our most challenging relationships and our most difficult health issues provide opportunities to heal and evolve with these soul companions. Understanding this broader context can transform our experience of illness from isolation to connection. We begin to see that our challenges are not evidence that we're alone or abandoned, but proof that we're deeply connected to a vast network of souls, all working together for mutual evolution. The ultimate message in Cayce's teachings about illness and death is one of hope, empowerment, and profound love. We're not helpless victims of either disease or death, but eternal spiritual beings using temporary physical experiences for permanent soul growth. The universe itself is structured to support our evolution, and every experience, no matter how challenging, serves this ultimate purpose. Your physical illnesses don't follow you after death, but the courage you develop in facing them becomes eternal. The patience you learn through chronic pain transforms into permanent spiritual wisdom. The compassion you develop through suffering becomes an unshakable part of your soul's essence. The love you express despite limitation transcends all boundaries of time and space. This is perhaps Edgar Cayce's greatest gift to humanity. The understanding that every challenge we face in this physical realm serves our soul's eternal journey toward greater love, wisdom, and spiritual wholeness. Death is not an ending but a graduation, and the lessons learned through physical experience become the foundation for continued growth in dimensions beyond our current understanding. As we face our own health challenges or support others facing theirs, we can take comfort in knowing that nothing is wasted, nothing is meaningless, and every moment of sincere effort toward healing and growth contributes to our soul's eternal treasure. The question isn't whether our illnesses follow us after death, it's how we'll transform our current challenges into the spiritual gold that enriches our eternal journey. How will you transform your current challenges into eternal treasures? How will you use your experiences of limitation to develop unlimited spiritual qualities? How will you allow your temporary physical journey to serve your permanent spiritual evolution? The choice, as Edgar Cayce consistently taught, remains always yours. And in that choice lies the ultimate power of human consciousness, the ability to transform any experience, no matter how challenging, into spiritual advancement that benefits not just ourselves, but all of creation. But understanding this profound truth is just the beginning. Living it requires a fundamental shift in how we approach every aspect of our health journey. Cayce's readings provide practical guidance for this transformation that goes far beyond theoretical understanding. According to his documented teachings, the process of spiritual healing through illness involves what he called attunement, aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions with divine love and purpose. This isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing practice that gradually transforms not only our relationship to illness, but our entire experience of life. Cayce consistently emphasized that healing begins with forgiveness, both of ourselves and others. He taught that resentment, anger, and unforgiveness create energetic blocks that can manifest as physical illness. When we hold grudges or harbor bitterness, we literally poison our own systems. But when we choose forgiveness, we release these toxic patterns and allow healing energy to flow freely through our being. This doesn't mean we condone harmful actions or become doormats for others' bad behavior. Rather, forgiveness is an act of liberation, freeing ourselves from the burden of carrying others' mistakes and our own perceived failures. It's choosing our own spiritual freedom over the false satisfaction of righteous anger. In his readings about the relationship between emotions and physical health, Cayce revealed connections that modern science is only beginning to understand. He taught that every emotion has a corresponding physical vibration, and chronic emotional patterns literally reshape our cellular structure over time. Fear weakens the immune system, worry creates digestive problems, and anger inflames the entire body. But the reverse is also true. Positive emotions and spiritual states create healing vibrations that restore balance and vitality. Love, joy, peace, and compassion generate energy frequencies that promote healing at the cellular level. This is why Cayce so often prescribed attitude adjustments alongside physical treatments. One of the most powerful aspects of Cayce's healing philosophy is his teaching about the role of service in spiritual transformation. He consistently indicated that souls who focus on serving others, even while dealing with their own health challenges, often experience accelerated healing. This isn't because service earns divine favor, but because serving others helps us transcend the limitations of self-focused suffering. When we're caught up in our own pain and problems, we can become trapped in cycles of self-pity and despair. But when we look beyond ourselves to help others, we tap into a source of strength and purpose that transcends physical limitation. We discover that we're more than our bodies, more than our illnesses, more than our temporary circumstances. Cayce taught that every soul has unique gifts to offer the world, and these gifts often become more refined and powerful through the experience of overcoming challenges. The person who has struggled with depression may develop extraordinary compassion for others' emotional pain. Someone who has battled addiction might become a powerful healer for others caught in similar patterns. The individual who has faced life-threatening illness often develops a depth of spiritual wisdom that can inspire and guide others. This understanding transforms suffering from meaningless burden to meaningful purpose. We begin to see our challenges not as punishments or random misfortune, but as opportunities to develop the specific qualities our souls came to cultivate. Every difficulty becomes a chance to choose love over fear, faith over despair, hope over resignation. According to Cayce's teachings, the souls who make the greatest spiritual progress during incarnation are often those who face the greatest challenges. This doesn't mean that suffering is necessary for growth. Rather, that souls who are ready for accelerated development often choose more intensive learning experiences. They're like advanced students taking graduate-level courses instead of repeating elementary lessons. But here's what makes Cayce's perspective so hopeful. He taught that as we master these advanced lessons, we graduate to higher levels of spiritual existence where suffering becomes unnecessary. The soul that has learned patience through pain no longer needs painful experiences to maintain that patience. The soul that has developed compassion through hardship carries that compassion as a permanent quality. This is why Cayce was so emphatic that true healing must address the spiritual root causes of illness. When we heal only at the physical level without learning the deeper lessons, we miss the opportunity for permanent transformation. The same patterns may reassert themselves later in this lifetime or in future incarnations because the underlying spiritual imbalance hasn't been resolved. But when we approach illness as spiritual curriculum, when we ask what qualities we're meant to develop, what patterns we're meant to heal, what service we're meant to offer, we open ourselves to healing that goes far beyond the physical. We begin to heal at the level of our eternal being. Cayce also taught about the importance of what he called ideals, our deepest values and purposes that guide our choices and actions. He indicated that souls who have clear, spiritually aligned ideals heal more rapidly and completely, because their entire being is organized around growth and service rather than self-protection and limitation. Setting a spiritual ideal isn't about perfection or rigid adherence to religious doctrine. It's about choosing a quality or purpose that calls forth our highest nature. It might be love, service, wisdom, healing, peace, or any other quality that resonates with our soul's deepest purpose. When we align our thoughts, words, and actions with this ideal, we create coherence in our energy field that promotes healing at every level. Perhaps most remarkably, Cayce taught that as we heal spiritually, we often find ourselves drawn to help others with similar challenges. The person who has overcome addiction may feel called to addiction counseling. Someone who has healed from trauma might become a therapist or spiritual counselor. The individual who has navigated serious illness often develops healing abilities or becomes an advocate for others facing similar challenges. This isn't coincidence. It's the soul's natural expression of its expanded wisdom and compassion. When we transform our pain into purpose, when we use our healing to help others heal, we complete the spiritual circuit that makes our suffering meaningful and our recovery permanent. The ultimate vision in Cayce's teachings is of humanity gradually awakening to its true spiritual nature. He saw our current age as a time of unprecedented opportunity for both individual and collective healing. The challenges we face, whether personal illness or global crises, are all opportunities for consciousness to evolve beyond old patterns of fear, separation, and limitation. Every person who chooses healing over hurt, forgiveness over resentment, service over selfishness, contributes to this collective awakening. Every individual who transforms their illness into wisdom, their pain into compassion, their limitation into spiritual strength, becomes a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. This is the deeper answer to whether our illnesses follow us after death. The illnesses themselves dissolve with the physical body, but the love we've learned, the wisdom we've gained, the service we've offered, the forgiveness we've given, these become part of our eternal spiritual heritage. They're not just personal achievements, but gifts to all of consciousness. Your journey through illness, whatever form it takes, is not just your story. It's part of humanity's larger story of awakening to its divine nature. Your healing becomes a source of healing for others. Your courage inspires courage in others. Your transformation contributes to the transformation of the world. This is Edgar Cayce's most profound gift, showing us that every challenge is an opportunity, every limitation is a doorway to freedom, and every ending is actually a new beginning. Death doesn't end our story. It simply turns the page to the next chapter of our eternal spiritual adventure. Have you ever wondered why your cat suddenly stops dead in its tracks, staring at what appears to be absolutely nothing? Why they follow invisible movements with laser focus or back away from empty spaces as if something dangerous lurked there? Most people dismiss this as typical feline weirdness, but Edgar Cayce discovered something that would shake the foundations of how we understand our animal companions. It wasn't superstition. It wasn't imagination. It was documented spiritual reality that changed everything we thought we knew about cats. Through thousands of documented readings archived at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Cayce revealed that cats possess what he called heightened vibrational sensitivity. But this wasn't just about seeing ghosts or spirits. What Cayce discovered was far more profound and practical than anyone expected. Your cat isn't just seeing things you can't see. Your cat is actively protecting you from them. The entity sees that which is not visible to the human eye, Cayce explained during one of his most fascinating sessions on animal consciousness. For the animal kingdom possesses those abilities to perceive vibrations, emanations, and presences that exist beyond the three-dimensional plane. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Cayce didn't just confirm that cats could perceive spiritual dimensions. He revealed that they were serving as spiritual guardians, actively detecting and deflecting negative energies before those energies could affect your household. This wasn't coming from some mystical guru or ancient folklore. This was Edgar Cayce, the man whose medical diagnoses while in trance had been documented and verified thousands of times over decades of research. Think about the last time your cat positioned itself between you and a stranger who made you feel uneasy, or when your cat seemed agitated before you received bad news. According to Cayce's readings, your cat wasn't just being antisocial or randomly anxious. It was doing its job as your spiritual protector. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, as America grappled with economic hardship and World War, people sought spiritual guidance like never before. Cayce's readings during this period consistently revealed that cats possessed an extraordinary ability to perceive what he called aural emanations, the energy fields surrounding both living beings and discarnate entities. More remarkable still, these feline guardians were naturally drawn to households where spiritual seeking was taking place. One family discovered this truth in the most unsettling way possible. Their cat had developed a strange ritual of positioning itself in their daughter's bedroom doorway every single night, never sleeping, always watching a specific corner of the room. When the cat began hissing at empty air and refusing to let the child near that corner, the desperate parents sought answers through a Cayce reading. What they learned changed their entire understanding of reality. The reading revealed that a confused spirit, someone who had passed but hadn't yet moved toward the light, was attempting to communicate with their daughter. But their cat wasn't just seeing this entity. It was serving as a protective barrier, preventing any unwanted spiritual contact, while gently encouraging the lost soul to continue its journey. The cat had essentially become a spiritual bouncer for their home. This wasn't an isolated incident. Cayce's files contained case after case of cats demonstrating this same protective behavior. They would position themselves strategically, create energy barriers, and sometimes even guide lost spirits away from their human families. It was as if these animals had been designed specifically for this purpose. But the most incredible revelation was yet to come. Cayce explained that cats don't just see spiritual presences, they actively communicate with them. In his words, cats serve as bridges between dimensions, often helping confused souls find their way to the light, while simultaneously protecting their human households from potentially harmful spiritual interference. Imagine discovering that your seemingly aloof cat has been having conversations with beings from other dimensions right in your living room. This wasn't passive observation. These were active spiritual interventions happening under your roof every single day. The implications were staggering, and they got even more mind-bending when Cayce revealed why cats seemed more psychically gifted than other pets. Unlike dogs, who had chosen to bond completely with human consciousness, cats had maintained their independence and thus retained their broader spiritual awareness. Their apparent aloofness wasn't indifference, it was spiritual discernment at the highest level. This explained everything that had puzzled cat owners for centuries. That intense stare into seemingly empty space, focused attention on spiritual activity, their uncanny ability to sense when you're sick or upset before you even realize it yourself. They're reading your aura and energy field like an open book. Their tendency to disappear during family arguments or high-stress situations. They're protecting themselves from negative energy while often working behind the scenes to help restore harmony. In one of his most fascinating revelations, Cayce described how cats often serve as spiritual messengers, carrying information between the physical and spiritual planes. Families would notice their cats exhibiting specific behaviors before receiving important phone calls, or positioning themselves near family members who were about to experience significant life changes. The cats weren't predicting these events. They were actively participating in the communication network that connected their households to broader spiritual guidance. During the war years, when anxiety and uncertainty filled American homes, Cayce received an unusual number of questions about animals sensing danger or providing comfort during difficult times. His readings revealed that cats were particularly attuned to the emotional and spiritual needs of their human families, often intensifying their protective and healing work during periods of crisis. One woman wrote to Cayce about her cat's strange behavior during her husband's overseas deployment. The cat would spend hours sitting by the window, not looking outside but staring intently at the wall as if watching something invisible. On the days when the cat seemed most agitated during these sessions, she would later receive news that her husband had been in danger at exactly those times. Through Cayce's reading, she learned that her cat was actually maintaining a spiritual connection to her husband, monitoring his well-being across thousands of miles and alerting her when he needed extra prayers and positive energy sent his way. This revelation transformed how we understand the human-animal bond. We weren't just sharing our homes with pets. We were living alongside spiritual beings whose primary purpose was helping us navigate invisible dimensions of existence. Every purr, every strategic positioning, every mysterious stare into empty space was part of an elaborate spiritual support system that most humans never even realized existed. But Cayce's insights went far beyond individual protection. He revealed that cats were actually helping to maintain the spiritual balance of entire households and communities. When multiple cats lived in the same area, they would coordinate their spiritual work, creating networks of protection and communication that spanned neighborhoods. This explained why certain areas seemed to attract more cats than others. They were drawn to locations where spiritual activity was high and their services were most needed. The Sleeping Prophet's readings also unveiled something extraordinary about how cats processed spiritual information. Unlike humans, who typically receive psychic impressions through dreams or meditation, cats were constantly aware of multiple dimensional realities simultaneously. They lived in what Cayce called expanded present awareness, experiencing past, present, and future spiritual influences all at once. This is why your cat might react to something that hasn't happened yet, or seem to be interacting with someone who passed away years ago. One of the most profound cases involved a family whose elderly cat had begun spending hours each day sitting in the empty chair of their recently deceased grandmother. Initially heartbroken by what they assumed was the cat missing the woman, they consulted Cayce for comfort. Instead, they received a revelation that changed their grief into wonder. The reading revealed that their grandmother was indeed visiting regularly, and the cat was serving as a bridge, helping to maintain the loving connection between the physical and spiritual family members. The cat wasn't mourning. It was facilitating an ongoing relationship that transcended death itself. This understanding completely revolutionized how families dealt with loss and grief. Suddenly, their cat's behavior became a source of comfort rather than confusion. When cats seemed to interact with invisible presences, families began to recognize these moments as opportunities for continued connection with departed loved ones. The cat became a translator between worlds, helping families understand that death was simply a transition rather than an ending. Cayce's readings during this period also revealed that cats were particularly sensitive to the spiritual development of their human companions. As people engaged in prayer, meditation, or other spiritual practices, their cats would often become more active in their guardian roles, responding to the increased spiritual energy and activity in the household. Many spiritual practitioners began noticing that their cats would position themselves nearby during meditation sessions, not as a distraction, but as spiritual amplifiers and protectors. The scientific implications were equally mind-bending. If cats could perceive dimensions of reality that humans had lost access to, what did this suggest about the evolution of consciousness itself? Cayce's readings implied that spiritual perception wasn't supernatural. It was simply a broader range of natural awareness that humans had temporarily sacrificed in exchange for advanced material manipulation abilities. Our ancestors once possessed these same gifts, communicating telepathically and perceiving spiritual dimensions as naturally as cats still do today. This created a fascinating evolutionary partnership. While humans had developed sophisticated abilities to shape the physical world through technology and intellect, cats had maintained their access to the complete spectrum of reality. Together, we formed complementary teams, humans handling material needs while cats managed spiritual protection and communication. The seemingly independent cat was actually the most devoted partner imaginable, working tirelessly in dimensions we couldn't even perceive. Cayce emphasized that by carefully observing feline behavior, humans could begin developing their own dormant psychic abilities. When a cat focused intently on a specific area, he recommended that people also pay attention to that space, quietly opening their minds to whatever the cat was perceiving. With patience and practice, many discovered they could begin sensing the same spiritual presences their cats had been monitoring all along. The cat became a spiritual teacher, helping humans remember abilities they had never truly lost. The transformation in households that embraced this understanding was remarkable. Instead of dismissing strange cat behavior as meaningless quirks, families began treating their feline companions as respected spiritual advisors. They started paying attention to their cats' reactions to visitors, trusting their spiritual assessment of new people and situations. They learned to interpret different types of cat behavior as various forms of spiritual communication and protection. During particularly turbulent periods in American history, Cayce noticed that cats' protective behaviors intensified dramatically. The spiritual stress of economic depression, war, and social upheaval created increased need for the kind of energetic clearing and protection that cats naturally provided. Families with cats reported feeling more stable and secure during these challenging times, not just because of emotional comfort, but because of the active spiritual work their feline guardians performed around the clock. One remarkable reading addressed a community-wide phenomenon where local cats had begun gathering in unusual numbers around a particular church during evening prayer services. Rather than being a nuisance, Cayce revealed that these cats were responding to the concentrated spiritual energy of group prayer and were actually amplifying and protecting the congregation's spiritual work. The cats had recognized the church as a significant spiritual power point and had appointed themselves as its guardians. This revelation connected ancient wisdom traditions from around the world with modern spiritual understanding. The reverence for cats in Egyptian temples, their association with goddesses and sacred spaces, their role as guardians of spiritual knowledge, all of these traditions suddenly made perfect sense in light of Cayce's revelations. Ancient peoples had understood what modern humanity was only beginning to rediscover. Cats were natural spiritual allies, deserving of respect and partnership, rather than mere ownership. One of Cayce's most profound insights came during a reading in 1941, when he was asked about the spiritual purpose of animals in general. He explained that different animal species served different spiritual functions on Earth. Cats, he revealed, were specifically designed to be living sensors of spiritual activity, helping to maintain the balance between the physical and spiritual dimensions in human environments. This revelation reframed everything about the human-cat relationship. We weren't just caring for pets. We were sharing our homes with spiritual beings whose primary purpose was to help us navigate the invisible dimensions of existence. Every time a cat stared intently at something we couldn't see, every time they seemed to be tracking invisible movements, every time they positioned themselves protectively near us during times of stress or illness, they were fulfilling their cosmic purpose as bridges between worlds. Cayce's readings also revealed that cats were particularly sensitive to the spiritual development of their human companions. As people engaged in meditation, prayer, or other spiritual practices, their cats would often become more active in their spiritual guardian role, responding to the increased spiritual energy and activity in the household. This explained why many spiritual practitioners throughout history had reported unusual behavior from their cats during periods of intensive spiritual work. The scientific implications were equally fascinating. If cats could perceive dimensions of reality that humans typically couldn't access, what did this suggest about the nature of consciousness itself? Cayce's readings implied that spiritual perception wasn't supernatural at all. It was simply a broader range of natural awareness that most humans had temporarily lost access to through their focus on purely material existence. In reading after reading, Cayce emphasized that humans once possessed these same abilities. Our ancient ancestors could perceive auras, communicate telepathically, and interact with spiritual beings just as naturally as cats still do today. The difference was that human consciousness had become increasingly focused on the physical dimension, while cats had retained their connection to the fuller spectrum of reality. This created a fascinating partnership between humans and cats. While we had developed sophisticated abilities to manipulate the physical world, cats had maintained their access to spiritual dimensions. Together, we could create households that were both materially secure and spiritually protected. The cat's spiritual vigilance complemented our physical caretaking, creating a complete environment for both physical and spiritual well-being. Cayce's reading suggested that by observing our cat's behavior, we could actually begin to develop our own spiritual sensitivity. When a cat stared at a particular area of the room, Cayce recommended that humans pay attention to that space as well. Over time, with practice and patience, many people found they could begin to sense the spiritual presences their cats were observing. The cat became a teacher, helping to reawaken dormant spiritual abilities in their human companions. One particularly touching case involved an elderly woman whose cat had been acting increasingly protective and vigilant. Through Cayce's reading, she learned that her deceased husband was frequently visiting their home, and the cat was serving as an intermediary, helping to maintain the connection between the physical and spiritual dimensions of their continuing relationship. The cat wasn't just seeing a spirit, it was facilitating an ongoing, loving relationship that transcended death itself. This understanding transformed how people related to their cats. Instead of dismissing feline behavior as mysterious or aloof, families began recognizing their cats as active participants in their spiritual well-being. They started paying attention to their cat's warnings about certain people or situations, trusting their spiritual discernment about visitors and changes in the household energy. Cayce's revelations about cats also shed light on ancient spiritual traditions from around the world. The reverence for cats in Egyptian culture, their association with goddesses and temples, their role as guardians of sacred spaces, all of this aligned perfectly with Cayce's readings about feline spiritual sensitivity. Ancient peoples had understood what modern humanity had largely forgotten. Cats were natural spiritual allies, deserving of respect and partnership rather than mere ownership. The implications extended beyond individual households to our understanding of consciousness itself. If animals retained spiritual abilities that humans had largely lost, what did this suggest about the evolution of consciousness? Cayce's readings implied that spiritual development wasn't necessarily linear, that in some ways our animal companions had maintained connections to universal consciousness that could serve as guides for human spiritual reawakening. As we moved into the modern era, with its emphasis on scientific materialism and technological advancement, Cayce's insights about cats offered a bridge between ancient wisdom and contemporary understanding. Our feline companions weren't primitive beings we had evolved beyond. They were spiritual teachers who could help us remember abilities we had never truly lost, only temporarily forgotten. The next time you see your cat staring intently at what appears to be empty space, remember that you're witnessing something far more profound than unusual animal behavior. You're watching a spiritual being at work, serving as a guardian, messenger, and bridge between dimensions of reality. Your cat isn't just seeing more than you can, it's actively working to protect and guide your household through spiritual dimensions you're only beginning to rediscover. In our modern world of constant distractions and material focus, perhaps it's time to pay attention to what our cats have been trying to show us all along. They're not just pets sharing our homes, they're spiritual partners, helping us remember who we really are and what we're truly capable of perceiving. The question isn't whether cats can see things we can't. The question is, are we ready to learn from them how to see more clearly ourselves? Through Edgar Cayce's documented readings, we discover that the spiritual world isn't separate from our daily lives. It's right here, surrounding us constantly, perceiving and interacting with us through the wise, watchful eyes of our feline companions. They've been keeping us safe and connected to the broader reality of existence, one gentle purr and vigilant gaze at a time.